welcome to tonight's 5 on 5. I'm joined by Congressman Greg Walden. He is the U.S. representative for Oregon's 2nd Congressional District. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
So you've talked a lot about net neutrality and the FCC. You've said that net neutrality represents potential regulatory overreach when it comes to, consumers that might hurt consumers. Talk a little bit more about your views on net neutrality.
Sure. So there are a couple of things. First of all, I don't think it was needed, what the FCC did. I think it was illogical and illegal. It's being litigated now already. What we needed was a simple way to say to the ISP, the internet service providers, don't block traffic, don't have paid prioritization, don't throttle to your advantage over others. And we have legislation that would do that and stop the bad behavior. The FCC went further than that, though, and are now treating the internet as if it were a regulated monopoly utility. That's never happened, never should happen, and it will result in less investment, higher prices for consumers, and less choice.
Okay, and how is this all going to play out? What are the next steps that you're working on?
Well, we're open to working a bipartisan way to, as I say, push legislation through, right legislation that will stop the bad behavior with clear enforcement, because none of us wants that. What we don't want to do, though, is have what we have now under these rules, which is a blocking of investment in building out the internet. Look, we ought to clear the way so that entrepreneurs want to expand access, want to expand speeds, want to build it out. That's how the internet's grown the way it has today, is with very light touch regulation. So we have legislation on that, and we're looking at the options going forward.
Okay, and there have been new developments with timber funding, correct?
Yes.
I hear there's been an extension. You've credited Congressman DeFazio with helping to get these timber payments through. Explain how it's been, the process in the House, and a little bit more about the legislation.
So at the end of the year, the effort never materialized in the Senate to extend the county timber payments. And at that point, I talked to the Speaker of the House, John Boehner, and said, we've got to get this done. He said, we will. You got my word. We'll do it by the end of the first quarter. We just have to find the right vehicle. So we worked really closely on that. And then we found the right vehicle, and I went to Peter and said, we need to make this bipartisan. It'll go better. And so he worked with Ms. Pelosi. And together, between Ms. Pelosi and Mr. Boehner, myself and Peter, we got 2 years of funding for SRS, Secure Rural Schools, in a bill that just passed with 392 votes in the House that the Senate will take up when they come back in 2 weeks. This is really important. Now, look, this does not solve our issue with the timber industry or our ability to manage our forests, to reduce wildfire, create jobs, have better management of our public lands. We still need to work on all of that. I said this is like the can of flat fix on an emergency repair on the highway. We can't let our counties go broke. We can't allow our school kids to be hurt because they don't have enough funding. When you're in these forested communities, we need to take care of this safety net, this commitment between the federal government and the local community, which today manifests itself as Secure Rural Schools, just a funding stream. We need to get away from that, by the way, going forward. Work on forestry legislation, which the House has twice passed in a bipartisan way. The Senate would never take it up. We need to bring the Senate to the table with the House, get it done for the long term.
And this 2-year extension, what exactly does the money go toward for Oregon?
So it flows into both the school fund, so it will flow out across every school district in Oregon. It's about $100 million a year, and the rest will go out to the counties. So, for example, in Jackson County, I think the figure is several millions of dollars, maybe as much as 7. Klamath County, Josephine County, it's all in the millions. And so this really helps with that safety net. For law enforcement, for roads, and for our schools. Absent that, some of these counties, especially on the South Coast, were facing bankruptcy.
Okay, wow. And we're coming up on fire season pretty quickly. Many people are concerned about this fire season, wondering if it's going to be worse than last year, worse than previous years because of the dry conditions, the drought that we've been experiencing. Are you comfortable with Congress's approach, the money allotted to Oregon in order to help fight these fires?
It's a really good question, because we're going to have an earlier fire season for sure. There's no snowpack out there to speak of. And absent some unusual rain throughout the summer, which is probably unlikely, we're going to have big fires. So how do you pay for it's the issue. And today we're working on an effort to open a funding stream through the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA. I think forest fires on federal land should be paid for when we fight them, just as we pay for hurricanes and floods and tornadoes, because it is an emergency. It's naturally caused. And right now, the way it works is the money comes out of the Forest Service or BLM budgets. generally out of the funds that we've set aside to do forest work to reduce the threat of fire, which, by the way, it's 4 times cheaper to reduce the threat of fire by doing active management than to pay to fight it. And so we're trying to change in Congress the policies to allow FEMA to help pay for the firefighting rather than take it out of the funds to reduce. And meanwhile, we've got a commitment to hit some funding targets so that we can pay for the fires. But gosh, if we could just get into the woods and manage, we'd reduce that threat of fire and reduce the severity of fire and improve our airshed, our watersheds, and put people to work.
And really quickly, last question, what is worrying you the most about Oregon these days?
I think, we need to continue a focus on the economy. I'm concerned about our school kids and some of the test results where, depending upon how you calculate it, they say we're at 48% or something, or among 48th in the country out of 50 states. These things bother me. Because our future is our children, and our future is about making sure they're able to compete in a world global market when it comes to jobs, and so education really matters. From a global standpoint, though, I'm deeply concerned about what's happening internationally and that it could spill back over here. So we got to watch our national security as well.
Okay, lots of work to be done in the Capitol. Thank you so much, Congressman. Really appreciate it.
It's good to be with you. Thanks again.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.